My boyfriend broke up with me for the dumbest reason after I supported him for years, but he forgot the house is in my name. And now he's living in his car. My girlfriend dumped me for the dumbest reason after I stood by her side for years, but she seemed to forget the house is in my name, and now she's crashing in her car. Before I get into it, let me back up a little. I'd been with Claire for 6 years. 6 long years I thought were built on love, loyalty, and a whole lot of patience. And when I say patience, I mean I was the one keeping us afloat financially while she chased one big idea after another. First, there was the YouTube channel she swore would blow up bigger than PewDiePie, but it barely got a handful of views. Then came the NFT phase where she claimed she was ahead of everyone else. Spoiler alert, she wasn't. And of course, her brief run in crypto, where she managed to burn through most of her savings. Through all that nonsense, I was the one making sure we stayed on track. Mortgage? That was me. Utility bills? Also me. Groceries? Paid for by me. Car payments? You guessed it, me again. Claire was the dreamer, and I guess I was the fool dumb enough to keep betting on those dreams. Every time she'd come running with another $1 million idea, her eyes all lit up with excitement. I'd swallow my doubts and back her up. She'd always say, "This time will be different." And like an idiot, I kept believing her. Things started to get weird about 2 weeks ago. Claire began pulling away, glued to her phone more than usual, tossing out comments about needing space to grow and find herself. At first, I brushed it off. She tends to get deep and philosophical whenever she's about to launch into her next scheme, but then she started nitpicking the house in ways she never had before. Suddenly, she had a problem with dirty dishes or laundry not folded right, saying it in this sharp, judgmental tone I'd never heard from her. Then, last week, she sat me down at the kitchen table right after I got home from work. She had that serious face on, the same one I'd seen a few times before, usually right before she announced another failed project. But the words that came out of her mouth made me feel like I'd stepped into some parallel universe. She said, "I think we should break up." And then came the kicker. "You don't do enough around the house." I actually laughed at first because I was sure she was joking. But when she didn't even crack a smile, something inside me just shifted. This woman, who I'd practically been parenting for 6 years, was accusing me of not pulling my weight. When I asked her to explain, thinking there's no way she was serious, she doubled down. "You never clean up after yourself, and I feel like I'm the one doing all the emotional labor. I'm always the one pointing out what needs to be done." Let me paint the picture. I work crazy hours to keep the bills paid while she's at home, plotting her next big move. Sure, sometimes I'm too tired to wash the dishes right away or fold the laundry that second. Maybe I'll leave a coffee cup on the counter or forget to put my shoes away. But you know what I don't forget? Paying every single bill that keeps a roof over our heads and food on the table. Meanwhile, her biggest contribution to our home was reorganizing the bookshelf by genre 3 different times and tossing out perfectly good Tupperware because it didn't spark joy. This is the same woman who flips out if the Wi-Fi is down for 5 minutes. Guess who's always the one calling the provider to fix it? Me. Birthdays, holidays, every single weekend plan, arranged by me. She wouldn't even order takeout without asking for my opinion 3 times and still managed to mess up my order. But here's where it really went off the rails. After her little breakup speech, Claire started walking around the place like the house was already hers. She smirked and said, "This will be a good reset for both of us," then suggested I should probably move back in with my mom or something. She even started talking about turning the guest room into her office once I was gone, and maybe getting a dog since nobody would be around to complain about the hair anymore. That's when it hit me. She had either completely forgotten or never realized whose name was actually on the deed. And here's a hint. It sure as hell wasn't hers. This house was left to me by my grandparents. Every payment, every repair, every bill, it's all mine. I excused myself, headed upstairs, and locked the bedroom door. I wasn't going to argue or try to talk her out of it. Nope. I was going to let her stew in that fantasy as long as she wanted. Let her think she was winning. Let her believe I was the one packing up and heading out. Because the truth is, Claire had no idea what was coming. She had no clue she was about to lose everything. And honestly, I couldn't wait to see the look on her face when reality hit. First update. So in my last post, I mentioned my girlfriend, well, ex-girlfriend now. Claire dumped me out of nowhere, claiming I didn't do enough around the house. Which, honestly, is hilarious considering I was the one paying for literally everything. Mortgage, utilities, groceries, you name it. Meanwhile, she was working on herself for the past 3 years. Oh, and don't forget, I also cooked, cleaned, and handled pretty much every chore that wasn't attached to her precious gaming setup. But here's the kicker. After breaking up with me, she started acting like she owned the place. I swear, It took her maybe 5 seconds to decide the house was hers. She never outright said it, but the way she carried herself made it obvious. She started lounging around like she was queen of a castle she hadn't built, leaving messes everywhere, staying up till 4 a.m., gaming like nothing had changed. She even had the nerve to start telling me what I needed to pack so I could leave in an orderly fashion. Meanwhile, I just sat there in disbelief, waiting to see how far she'd take this delusion. Spoiler alert, it went pretty far. About a week after the breakup, Claire told me she was having a friend over. She barely looked at me when she said it, muttering something about how I needed to respect her space. Respect her space? In my house? Sure thing, sweetheart. I just nodded, curious to see who this so-called friend was. Then the doorbell rang, and when I opened it, there stood a woman with a big smile and a bottle of wine. Her name was Madison, and to be fair, she seemed nice enough. Polite, even. But it didn't take a genius to figure out she wasn't just some friend. The way Madison looked at Claire? Yeah, it was obvious. They weren't just friends. Those two were definitely together. Claire didn't even bother introducing us properly. She just strutted past me like I was the hired help, giving Madison a little tour of the house. My house. And boy, did she hype it up like she was some hotshot realtor. This is the living room. I've been thinking about getting a new couch in here. Something more modern, you know? This is the kitchen. I love the open layout. It's great for hosting. And this right here is my office. It's where I do most of my work these days. I nearly spit my drink out at that last part. Work? The woman hasn't had a real job since 2018. The so-called office she was bragging about is just the spare bedroom I fixed up, so she might have a place to do freelance stuff. Truth is, it's mostly where she parks herself to play Fortnite for hours. But Madison was eating it up. I could practically see her picturing herself moving in, settling into this picture-perfect life, like something straight out of Pinterest. Meanwhile, I was standing there in the kitchen, squeezing my coffee mug so tight I thought it might shatter in my hand. At that point, I had two choices: blow up and tell them both exactly what I thought, or keep my cool and watch Claire bury herself in lies. I went with option 2. Honestly, I wanted to see just how far she'd run with this charade. The whole evening, Claire acted like she'd already moved on and was graciously letting me stick around until I got things in order. She even pulled me aside at one point and said, "I think it's best if we figure out a timeline for when you'll be out. No rush, of course, but Madison and I need to start planning." Planning what? A housewarming party? In my living room? I just smiled and told her, "Oh, don't worry about me. I've got everything handled." You should have seen her face. She looked so smug, like she'd already won. That's when I made my move. The very next morning, while Claire was still snoring in bed, I called a locksmith. He was in and out in under an hour. I paid him, thanked him, and then sat down with a hot cup of tea to wait. When Claire finally dragged herself into the kitchen, acting like she owned the place, I casually said, "Oh, by the way, I had the locks changed this morning. You'll need to pack up your stuff and be out by the end of the day." Man, you should have seen the panic on her face. She went pale. "What do you mean you changed the locks? You can't do that." "Oh, but I absolutely could. This is my house," I told her. "It's in my name. You're not on the deed. You're not on the mortgage. And starting today, you're not welcome here." She tried everything, arguing, pleading, even guilt-tripping me. At one point, she looked at me with those sad eyes and said, "I thought you loved me. I thought we were building something together." Right about then, Madison showed up, probably expecting another cozy evening with her new girlfriend. Instead, she walked into Claire stuffing her things into bags while I leaned against the counter with my arms crossed, reminding her not to forget her beloved gaming chair. Madison looked totally confused, asking, "Wait, this isn't your house." Claire didn't even try to answer. By the end of the day, both of them were gone. I poured myself a glass of wine, stretched out on the same old couch Claire wanted to replace, and thought about how close I came to losing everything just because I'd been too generous with my money, my patience, and my time. Never again. Oh, and in case you're wondering, Claire's been couch surfing ever since. Word is Madison dumped her too once she realized Claire was broke, jobless, and basically homeless. Karma sure knows how to show up when it's needed. Second update. I figured that was the end of it. But turns out, Claire wasn't quite done making a fool of herself. A couple days after she left, I got a call from our mutual buddy, Jake, just checking in. From the way he was talking, I could tell he was fishing for something, so I asked him straight up, "Did Claire put you up to this?" He hesitated, but eventually admitted the truth. Turns out Claire had been planning this breakup for months. She'd been telling anyone who'd listen, friends, acquaintances, even her family, that she was about to take over the house and start a fresh new chapter. She painted herself as the poor, long-suffering girlfriend who had put up with my nagging for years. And according to her, the house was practically hers already because of all the work she'd put into making it a home. I had to stop Jake right there because I was laughing too hard. Work? Claire barely managed to wash her own laundry, let alone lift a finger to maintain the house. I asked him if Claire ever mentioned the little detail about the place being in my name. Jake said she figured I'd just leave if she told me to, and if not, she'd figure something out. Oh, Claire. Sweet, delusional Claire. She was so sure I'd just roll over and hand her the keys that she actually started celebrating early. She told people she was finally free to focus on her life, and even started making plans to host a housewarming party. In my house. The nerve. But what really ticked me off was what Jake told me next. Claire had been downplaying everything I did for her. She told people I was barely paying the bills, and that she was the one carrying us. This from the same woman who didn't even know what the mortgage payment was each month. The lies were so bold and ridiculous I had to laugh. I thanked Jake for filling me in, and then I started thinking about how to shut this circus down for good. At first, I thought about just letting it go. Claire was gone, the house was mine, and I could finally move on. But then I remembered the years of manipulation, freeloading, and now this smear campaign. Nope, not happening. I wasn't letting her rewrite the story. I was going to hit her right where it hurt most, her ego. First, I sent a polite but very clear group message to all our mutual friends, just to set the record straight. I laid out the facts. The house was 100% in my name. Claire had never paid a dime toward the mortgage or utilities. Any claim that she built our life together was pure fiction. I kept my tone calm and unemotional, but I included receipts, old lease agreements, utility bills, and even a photo of the deed with my name on it. I wasn't about to let her twist the truth any further. Then, I reached out to a local charity that helps people furnish their homes. I donated every last bit of junk Claire left behind. His old desk, that couch he never touched, and even the gaming chair he abandoned in his rush to leave. I let all of it go. They were thrilled to haul it off, and honestly, I was just as thrilled to see it disappear. The last thing I felt I had to do was reach out to Trevor's parents. They'd always treated me kindly, and I figured they deserved to know the truth about what really happened. I didn't lay out every single detail, but I told them enough for it to be crystal clear. Trevor's poor me act was nothing but smoke and mirrors. Not long after, our group chat exploded. Most people were floored, saying they never realized Trevor had been spinning such an outrageous story. A handful of his closer buddies tried to defend him, talking about how he'd been going through a lot. I shut that down quick. We all go through things, I told them, but that doesn't give anyone the right to lie and steal. Of course, Trevor found out and called me, absolutely livid. He accused me of destroying his life and airing dirty laundry. I kept my voice calm and told him he'd been airing it himself for months. I just straightened out the facts. Then I hung up and blocked his number. As for his parents, they were horrified. They apologized over and over, saying they had no clue he'd been treating me so badly. His mom even offered to help cover some of the bills he'd left behind. I turned her down. I wasn't after money. I just wanted them to know the truth. The cherry on top came a few weeks later. I bumped into Jenna at a coffee shop, and she walked over looking embarrassed. She apologized for ever getting involved, saying Trevor had lied to her too. Told her the whole house situation was some kind of mutual decision. Then she hit me with the funniest news I'd heard in a long time. Trevor was living in his car. Turns out, none of his friends wanted to take him in after hearing what really happened, and even his parents weren't interested in bailing him out. He'd burned every bridge, and now he was stuck sleeping in his back seat. Look, I don't wish homelessness on anybody, but in his case, I can't muster up too much sympathy. He made his bed, or in this case, his cramped car, and now he had to lie in it. That brings me to the third update. Remember how I said Trevor wasn't finished trying to get the house back? Well, buckle up, because it gets even more ridiculous. Last week, I was out having lunch with my sister Claire. The whole time, she kept fiddling with her phone and shooting me these awkward looks, like she wanted to say something but couldn't find the words. Finally, I asked her straight up what was going on. Don't be mad, she started. Which, let's be honest, is never a good way to begin. Then she admitted that Trevor had reached out to her. I nearly spat my drink all over the table. What? Apparently, Trevor's been running around telling anyone who'll listen that he and I had some kind of verbal agreement about the house. According to him, we were practically married. We weren't. And supposedly, he'd made all these big contributions to the household. He hadn't. But the kicker? He asked Claire for money. Not just a couple $100 either. He wanted enough to get back on his feet and fight for what's rightfully his. And, get this, she actually gave it to him. Now, before you grab a torch and pitchfork, let me explain. Claire and I are close, and she's usually one of the sharpest people I know. But Trevor had fed her this sob story about how he'd invested everything into our relationship and was now homeless because of me. He even pulled out old screenshots of bills he'd paid years ago, conveniently skipping over the part where he used my money to pay them. I just felt bad, Claire admitted, looking guilty. He was living in his car and seemed so sure about everything. He said he only needed enough to get started again. I sat there, stunned, trying to process it. Finally, I asked the dreaded question, how much? $2,000, she muttered into her coffee. $2,000. I was ready to blow a gasket. But then she showed me their text conversation, and as I scrolled through it, I realized my sister might be smarter than I gave her credit for. She hadn't just handed him cash, she'd made him sign a legit IOU, complete with repayment terms and interest. She even got him to put up his car as collateral. When I asked why she went through all that trouble for what was basically a small loan, she just smirked. Because I knew he was full of it. I wanted proof of how desperate he's gotten. And honestly, I thought having it in writing could be useful later. I could have hugged her on the spot. But wait, it gets better. Remember Caleb, the friend who clued me in about Trevor plotting before the breakup? Well, he sent me screenshots of Trevor's latest social media nonsense. Trevor's out there painting himself as the victim of a calculated gold digger, me. According to his new tale, I trapped him in a relationship for 6 years just to steal his future earnings. Yeah, you heard that right. He actually thinks I supported his unemployed self for half a decade because I was after the fortune he was definitely going to make off all those failed projects I funded. His posts are full of these vague accusations about how I manipulated him and preyed on his trusting nature. In Trevor's new reality, he was the one supporting me emotionally while I was unstable and couldn't maintain healthy relationships. This is coming from the same guy who once had a 3-hour meltdown because I brought home the wrong brand of energy drink. But here's where it gets even juicier. My friend Zoe has been keeping tabs on who Trevor's been contacting, and apparently, he's spinning a different story for every audience. To some folks, he's the victim of a controlling ex. To others, he's the selfless partner who sacrificed everything for me. And for a select few, he's claiming we had some kind of business partnership that I double-crossed. The lies keep growing too. Just last week, he told someone that I'd promised to put his name on the deed as a birthday gift, then backed out of spite. Which is hilarious considering this is the same guy who once forgot my birthday completely because he was too busy trying to become a Twitch streamer. Yesterday, my phone blew up with a string of unhinged messages from him, ranting about how he was finally going to expose me to everyone we knew. He's been threatening to spill all my so-called secrets. Honestly, I can't help but wonder what secrets he even thinks he's got, considering I'm the one who knows about his disastrous cryptocurrency gamble and that ridiculous phase when he tried to launch a career as a professional dog photographer. Using my camera, no less. I haven't written him back once, but I've kept every single message. Deep down, I know this mess isn't done. Trevor's never been the type to face facts. Now that he's drained Claire's money, probably on yet another get-rich-quick fantasy, I can almost bet he's scheming up some new way to squeeze something out of me. Here's the last update. Just this past Sunday, I was at the store doing my regular grocery run when I literally bumped into Trevor's mom. I figured I'd smile and keep moving, but she stopped me by holding onto my cart and said, "We need to talk." His mom's always been kind to me, even after everything blew up, but that day she looked different. Not just worried, angry too. She asked me to sit down for coffee, and something in her voice made me agree. Once we sat, she let out a heavy sigh and told me, "I need to tell you what Trevor's been doing, because it's gone too far." Turns out, he had shown up at his parents' house the week before with some wild story about how he was about to reclaim my house. According to him, he had proof I'd somehow tricked him into putting all the bills in my name. He even claimed he had receipts showing he gave me cash for the down payment. His mom stopped him cold and reminded him she and his dad were right there when I bought the place, long before Trevor even moved in. But Trevor wouldn't quit. He just kept talking over her, insisting he was building a case and needed to borrow money to make it right. When they refused, he blew up, throwing accusations that they never supported his dreams and were siding with me over their own son. His mom looked completely drained telling me all this. "He's not the boy I raised," she said quietly. "I don't know what happened to him, but you need to hear this part." That's when she started laying out things I never knew. Like how Trevor had told his younger sister that he'd already bought me out of the house, and that's why he needed her savings for renovations. Being only 19 and trusting her big brother, she gave him what she had. Or how he'd gone around spinning different versions of his story to relatives. To some, he claimed we were secretly married. To others, he said I promised him the house in exchange for sweat equity. His words, not mine. He even told his grandmother I was holding his gaming setup hostage, the same gear I'd donated to charity months earlier. Then she showed me the kicker, screenshots of a GoFundMe page he'd made. The headline? Help local man reclaim his home from manipulative ex. I almost spit out my coffee. The page was nothing but lies about how he poured his life savings into the house. What savings? And how I tricked him with the paperwork. He even posted photos of my house, bragging about renovations he supposedly did. The closest thing Trevor ever did to fixing anything was moving furniture around when he didn't feel like applying for jobs. But the part that floored me? People were actually donating. Not a huge amount, but enough to keep him believing his scam was working. He'd managed to collect around $800 before his mom reported the page and had it shut down. I had to step in, she said firmly. He needs to face reality. Then she admitted something else. Trevor had been living out of his car in their driveway for the past week, refusing to step inside unless they agreed to back him up. Every morning, he left saying he had meetings about the house. Every night, he came back with a new story about his so-called progress. She finally hit her breaking point when she overheard him trying to talk Jenna, remember her? Into being a witness about how the house was really his. Jenna, thankfully, laughed in his face and hung up. I'm not telling you this for sympathy, his mom said, her voice tight. I'm telling you so you'll be prepared. He's not going to stop until he has no choice. Then she surprised me. She pulled a small photo album from her bag and handed it to me. Inside were pictures of Trevor from family gatherings, holidays, just everyday moments over the past few years. And in every single one, there he was glued to his phone or laptop, working on his next big scheme while everyone else actually enjoyed life. I should have noticed sooner, she said softly. How he used people. How he always had an angle. I let it go on too long, and I'm sorry you got tangled in it. I tried to hand the album back, but she shook her head. Keep it. Maybe someday he'll want to see the man he used to be. But for now, I have to do what I should have done years ago. She explained that she and Trevor's dad had made up their minds. They were changing the locks and cutting him off their Wi-Fi. No more letting him camp out in their driveway. No more enabling his games. They'd arranged for him to stay with an uncle in another state who offered him an actual job. No computers, no schemes, just real work. Either he takes the opportunity and straightens up, or he figures it out on his own. We're done watching him tear down other people's lives just because he won't build his own, she said. As we stood to leave, she hugged me tightly and whispered, "Thank you for showing him there are consequences. I just wish he'd learned from them." I watched her walk away, feeling a strange mix inside me. Relief that his own family finally saw him clearly, and sadness for the man he could have been if he'd chosen differently.